The bond between a Navy SEAL and his K-9 partner is forged through fire, pain, and trust. It is a connection stronger than steel, nearly impossible to break. But one ruthless enemy discovered the single way to shatter that bond. He didn't aim for the soldier's body. He aimed for his soul. He captured the SEAL's loyal dog and threw him from a plane at 25,000 feet into the heart of a violent storm. The enemy believed the soldier would be forced to watch, powerless and broken. What he never expected was that the SEAL would jump after him. With no guarantee of survival and no certainty he could even find his partner, the soldier leapt into the frozen darkness. This is the unforgettable story of loyalty, sacrifice, and a miracle in the sky. Lieutenant Jake Atlas Sullivan woke at 4:30 a.m. as gray fog pressed against the window of his modest quarters at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. Locals called it June gloom, but to Jake, it felt permanent. The cold Pacific air carried the scent of salt and distance, a reminder of everything he had lost. At 36, Jake's body was lean and disciplined, shaped by years of relentless training. But his eyes told a different story, storm-colored and quiet, holding a loneliness his rank could not conceal. At his feet lay Max, a powerful sable-coated German shepherd. The dog lifted his head, amber eyes calm and alert. Max didn't beg for attention or whine. He simply watched, steady, loyal, present. Jake rested a hand on Max's head, murmuring a rough good morning before moving to the kitchenette. The coffee machine hummed, filling the silence. Jake stared out the window as the weak morning light fought the fog. Though surrounded by the world's most elite warriors, Jake felt invisible. His teammates knew Atlas, the flawless operator, the man who never hesitated. They didn't know Jake. They didn't know the emptiness left behind by Clara, his wife, taken not by war but by a quiet illness that stole her piece by piece. 5 years had passed, yet the silence she left behind was louder than gunfire. After her death, Command noticed the hollow look in his eyes. They worried. They even tried to take Max away. That memory still sent a chill through him. 2 years earlier, Jake had sat in a sterile evaluation room with a psychologist and a senior K-9 handler. They questioned whether his grief compromised Max's readiness. When ordered to stay seated, Jake watched as Max was led away. But when the recall command came, Max ignored everyone else and launched himself into Jake's arms, whining, desperate, pressing against his chest. In that moment Jake broke. He sobbed openly, clinging to the dog who had become his anchor. The psychologist quietly closed her notebook. Max wasn't the problem. Max was the reason Jake was still standing. By 0600 hours, Jake and Max were inside the briefing room. The air smelled of burnt coffee, warm electronics, and gun oil. Outside, the thick fog muted the world, creating a heavy sense of isolation. Alpha Platoon was already seated. Reaper, the communications specialist, tapped restless fingers against his tablet. Tank, the massive heavy gunner, sat silent and solid as stone. They nodded at Jake as he entered. Then the door opened. Commander Thorne stepped inside and the room snapped to attention. Thorne was a man shaped by decades of war, his face etched with hard-earned authority. His sharp blue eyes scanned the room before he spoke. At ease. The main screen lit up, revealing a man with sharp features, cold gray eyes, and a faint, unsettling smile. This, Thorne said, is Viktor Orlov. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Orlov was former Spetsnaz, now the leader of a mercenary network driven not by money, but by revenge and ideology. Intelligence had traced him to a cluster of compounds hidden deep in the Eastern European highlands. This mission is reconnaissance only, Thorne continued. Insert, observe, and extract. Then he paused. There's more, he said, his gaze locking onto Jake. Our raid in Syria 3 years ago didn't just cost Orlov resources. It cost him his son. A low murmur passed through the room. This was no longer a standard operation. It was personal. Orlov knows this team, Thorne said grimly. And he knows you, Atlas. He studied your profile. He wants to hurt you. Jake stared at the image on the screen. Max shifted slightly beside him, sensing the tension. Jake's hand found the dog's fur without thought. For the first time since Clara's death, fear cut deep. 3 days later, the Black Hawk skimmed low over the jagged Carpathian Mountains. Rain lashed against the aircraft as dark forests and sheer rock faces rushed past below. Jake sat near the open door, the icy wind tearing at his gear. Max was clipped in beside him, calm and focused. The insertion was flawless. The helicopter hovered just long enough for the team to fast rope into the forest before vanishing into the mist. Silence closed in instantly. For hours they moved like ghosts. Reaper monitored electronic signals. Tank guarded the rear. Jake led with Max just ahead, ears twitching, nose working nonstop. Max wasn't just a dog, he was a living sensor. As dusk approached, they located the compound, a concrete bunker tucked into a narrow valley. But something was wrong. No signals, Reaper whispered. No heat. No movement. Jake studied the structure through his scope. No guards. No lights. No vehicles. It's a trap, Tank muttered. Jake nodded slowly. Orlov wouldn't abandon a site like this. Max and I go in, Jake said. You cover. They advanced cautiously. Then Max stopped. His body stiffened. A low growl rumbled from his chest. He sniffed the air, uneasy. There was a faint chemical smell, sharp, bitter, wrong. Jake misunderstood the warning. Moments later, as his hand touched the bunker door, the world exploded. The blast wasn't meant to kill. It was designed to separate. A concussive charge detonated outward, slamming Jake backward into a thick pine tree. His helmet absorbed the impact, but his vision went dark for a heartbeat. At the same instant, a second charge exploded inside the bunker, hurling Max into the darkness. The heavy steel door slammed shut like a vault. Gunfire erupted from the surrounding tree line. It wasn't aimed to kill, it was meant to trap. Rounds cracked through the air, pinning Reaper and Tank in place. Jake staggered to his feet, pain ripping through his shoulder. His only thought was Max. He fired at the door. The round sparked uselessly off reinforced steel. He rammed it with his body, but it didn't budge. Then a spotlight flared to life. The deep thudding of helicopter blades filled the clearing. An old black transport descended from the clouds. A calm, amplified voice echoed from its speakers. Lieutenant Sullivan, thank you for confirming your position. The bunker door hissed open. Jake raised his rifle but froze under the blinding light. Victor Orlov stepped forward, calm, controlled, immaculate in black tactical gear. Behind him, two men dragged Max into the light. The dog was limp, a dart visible in his side. No! Jake roared, lifting his weapon. Gunfire tore into the dirt at his feet, a warning. Orlov crouched beside Max, running a gloved hand over the dog's head. A magnificent animal, Orlov said softly. He has my son's eyes. Jake could only watch as Orlov turned away. Max was carried onto the helicopter. A sniper's round cracked inches from Jake's boots, forcing him to stop. The aircraft lifted into the storm and vanished. Silence followed, broken only by rain and the smell of cordite. Jake dropped to his knees. Back at the forward base, the debrief was cold and final. Commander Thorne's face filled the screen. Orlov manipulated us, Thorne said. The mission is scrubbed. Jake demanded an immediate rescue operation. No, Thorne replied. The K9 is listed as MIA. We will not escalate for an asset. He's not an asset, Jake snapped. He was taken. You are grounded, Thorne ordered. All of you are returning to Coronado. The screen went dark. The flight home was unbearable. Jake stared at the empty spot beside him where Max should have been. Back in his quarters, the silence was crushing. Max's leash still hung on the wall. His water bowl sat half full. Jake collapsed into the chair hollow. At 2:17 a.m. an encrypted email arrived. The video showed Orlov seated in a grand stone room. Max lay chained at his feet, alive, groomed, confused. You took my son, Orlov said calmly. So I took yours. He promised to throw Max from a plane in 48 hours. Jake stood slowly. The system would not save Max. He would. Jake didn't hesitate. Orders no longer mattered. Max was family. He packed quickly, civilian high-altitude jump gear, thermal layers, a medical kit, and AK-9 tandem harness he prayed he'd never need. Commander Thorne denied him transport, grounding him completely. But help came from an unexpected place. Chief Warrant Officer Anya Raven Petrova appeared at his door. Years earlier, Max had saved her life on a battlefield. Now she intended to repay that debt. A C-130 lifted into the night without transponders, pushing hard toward Eastern Europe. 17 hours later, battered by storms, Raven's voice crackled through Jake's headset. He's ahead of us. Same altitude. Flying straight into the storm. The rear ramp opened. Wind screamed into the cargo bay. Lightning flashed, revealing another aircraft ahead. A spotlight cut downward through the clouds. Orlov appeared at the open ramp of his plane, dragging Max. Jake's heart stopped. With a cruel final gesture, Orlov pushed Max into the void. Jake didn't think. He stepped off the ramp. The fall was brutal. Wind struck like concrete. Ice tore at his gear as he stabilized, eyes burning, lungs screaming. Lightning split the clouds, revealing Max tumbling below. Jake dove. Faster. Harder. Ignoring pain, fear, and reason, he chased a falling shadow through chaos. At 10,000 feet, he reached Max, grabbing the harness as the dog fought blindly in terror. Barehanded in sub-zero air, Jake clipped the tandem harness together with seconds to spare. At 3,000 feet he pulled the chute. The parachute deployed violently, wrenching them upward. Silence followed. Max whimpered, alive. They hit the mountain hard, sliding through snow before stopping against rocks. Max's leg was broken. Jake's hand was frostbitten. Hypothermia threatened them both. Using broken gear and sheer will, Jake splinted Max's leg, built a crude shelter, and held him through the night. At dawn, Orlov returned with armed men. Outnumbered and injured, Jake fought anyway. And when it mattered most, Max, running on 3 legs, launched himself at Orlov, giving Jake the opening to end the fight. Orlov was captured alive. Rescue helicopters arrived minutes later. Max survived surgery. Jake lost full use of his hand, but not his family. Months later, Max retired officially. No longer a military asset, just a dog. They lived quietly near a lake, far from war. One autumn afternoon, Jake tossed a ball into the water. Max ran, scarred but strong, into the sunlight. Jake smiled. He was home.